Some of the activism work that I do in Aotearoa, so I come from a background of having been active in the tribal council governance space. So I was on the council at one time for one of my iwi, Te Rarawa, and then another time for another of my Māori peoples, my iwi, Ngāti Kurī. And over that time, we negotiated and we settled 2 historical land claims settlements, one for each, and they were legislated in 2015. So, you know, the Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which is our Māori term for it's the treaty, but there isn't a treaty in English, there's only Te Tiriti in the Māori language, right? That's kind of running through my blood. You know, it's very normal to speak about what Te Tiriti guaranteed when we signed this. It's a covenant too. We call it a kawanata, a covenant. It's a very sacred agreement. And you don't go breaking sacred agreements lightly, but that's what the Crown has been continuing to do. So it's kind of ingrained in our genes that we fight and we're active around getting the government of the day to honour it. Many campaigns I've been on. I was a part of a constitutional working group, a Māori independent constitutional working group, and we did years of consultations around the country with different age groups and even Pākehā white people, mainstream populations, to get their perspective on what is our vision for our nation's constitution that will bring us together, not be all this dividing of us, you know, but what would be a constitution? What would bring us together? What should that look like? So I've been active in that, and that was actually published in 2016. But although it was years ago, our government now is so bad, so anti-Māori in its policies, that the Māori leadership back home, we declared them to be the enemy. That's an unprecedented move by Māori leadership. We've had our, fisticuffs and disagreements, but to declare war on the government, whoa. So we're bringing all that constitutional conversation work to the present moment, and we're reconstructing with gusto our sovereignty, our mechanisms, maybe it's a Māori parliament, maybe we need more political parties, or maybe whatever that looks like. We're like, we've had it with you guys. I would also go further, because I was at the United Nations in April, and just building on that idea. I have seen, having worked for 2 decades in the UN space, it is now fascistic. No debate. By that I mean corporations have captured so many spaces in the United Nations. I mean, everyone knew it was like that, like the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, other agencies clearly were captured. But then in 2019, you had the World Economic Forum went into an agreement with the UN to partner in achieving the 2030 agenda. That is, people should have been horrified. I mean, they don't even seek to hide it. They're like, we're just coming in and we're partnering, don't you know? We're the elite capitalists, whatever. I'm just astounded. I'm like, no, this is it. I've had enough. So I got on the General Assembly Hall stage in April when I was there for the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, and I just called them out. I said, the UN is fascistic. I propose we boycott. And by boycott, it could be, there's a whole lot of ways you can boycott. And remember, boycott is a legitimate action. Unions do it, people do it all the time. You could do boycott just one agency and keep going to others. You could send a skeleton crew only, instead of sending heaps of people to the UN, just really dial it back. Just send one person and say, no, we just don't think you're worth our time. Or you could totally not go to any of it. But the question then is, when you're creating a vacuum, you've got to replace it with nature abhors a vacuum. So then my supplemental part was, if we're going to boycott the UN, we ought to have our own Indigenous UN kind of thing. So that was that. And finally, just in December, still on the Te Tiriti theme, sovereignty theme. So this T-shirt, you can't really see it, but This is a t-shirt of a, what do you call it? Not a replica, a copy of an Activism redaction that we did at our New Zealand National Museum called Te Papatongarewa. What they did was they had a English treaty, massive display on the wall, and they had it faced off with the legitimate te tiriti in the Māori language, the inference being that the English was a translation, right? And in the English, you know what it said, Māori ceded sovereignty. And since 1840, that lie has been propagandized, and we just had enough. We just had enough. So a group of us went in there and we redacted it. There's a backstory to that. We don't have time to go into why we chose redaction as the art, modus operandi. And we got a sense of humour. So that's got 3 articles here. The first article we spray painted and scrubbed out everything except we left one word in there. We left it clearly. It was no. The second article, we scrubbed it all out, and it says, Her Majesty the Queen is the alien, because it had the word alienation in there somewhere. We scrubbed it to leave alien. The third one reads, Ration the Queen's veggies. And that's a hat tip to like what goes on in other countries and in history when the monarchs and the royalty, they were living in high while everyone else was starving. So yeah, we just wanted to recognise and respect history, and that we aren't the first ones to go through this with monarchs and colonisers. And it has to be disrupted. It's got to be stopped. Someone needs to do an intervention. So yeah, and so I'm facing criminal charges for intentional damage now, and I'm all good with that. I'm not saying I didn't do it. No, I was there. And my lawyers and I are treating it like an educational exercise for the New Zealand public, because if the curriculum in schools was correct about the relationship between Māori and the Crown, we wouldn't be even doing this. So it looks like I have to subsidise the nation again and educate people. So yeah, you got to have a sense of humour.